I'm new here, so I ain't rightly certain. Is everybody in this country as butt ugly as you three?
For decades, Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott have stood as two of Hollywood's most recognizable icons, admired for their rugged charisma, timeless performances, and enduring careers. Yet despite years of public fascination surrounding their relationship, much has remained unspoken. Now, at 81, Tom Selleck is finally breaking his silence, sharing reflections that have left longtime fans both surprised and deeply intrigued. But what prompted this rare moment of openness, and what does it reveal about one of Hollywood's most respected figures? The answers may be far more compelling than anyone expected. The remark that stopped fans. Something unexpected happened when Tom Selleck spoke about Sam Elliott. For many viewers, it sounded like a simple expression of respect between two longtime friends. Yet the reaction that followed suggested otherwise. Fans who had watched both men for decades immediately focused on the tone of Selleck's remarks, rather than the words alone. There was something unusually personal about them. At a time when most public comments from veteran stars are carefully measured and quickly forgotten, this moment lingered. People began asking why he had chosen to speak so openly now. The timing was impossible to ignore. Tom Selleck was 81 years old, a stage of life when many public figures became more reflective about the people who shaped their journeys. His career had stretched across generations, from struggling young actor to television icon. Along the way, he had experienced success, disappointment, missed opportunities, and remarkable longevity. Because of that history, listeners felt that any statement he made about Sam Elliott carried extra weight. It did not sound like a casual compliment delivered during a routine interview. It sounded more like a conclusion reached after decades of observation. That perception quickly fueled curiosity. Both men had spent years occupying similar spaces in the public imagination. They were often associated with westerns, traditional values, and a style of screen presence that seemed increasingly rare in modern Hollywood. Yet their careers followed different paths. Selleck became one of television's biggest stars, while Elliott built a reputation through steady, respected performances. Because their stories unfolded side by side for so long, some wondered whether Selleck's comments revealed something deeper about how he viewed Elliott's choices and achievements. As discussions spread, different interpretations emerged. Some people saw nothing mysterious at all. They believed Selleck was simply expressing affection for a friend he had known for most of his adult life. Others suspected there was more beneath the surface. They pointed to the sincerity in his delivery and the way he spoke about Elliott. In their view, the comments felt less like praise and more like recognition. After all, Hollywood is filled with famous partnerships, but very few endure for decades without. That reality only intensified interest in what Selleck was saying. Another question soon emerged. Why had these remarks captured attention now when both men had spoken positively about each other before? The answer was not entirely clear. Perhaps audiences were hearing them differently because time had changed the context. Perhaps Selleck's age gave the words greater significance. Or perhaps people sensed that he was reflecting on something larger than friendship. Whatever the reason, the moment transformed an ordinary statement into a compelling mystery. It suggested that understanding Tom Selleck's view of Sam Elliott might reveal far more than the story of two actors. Was this merely admiration, or something far deeper unfolding behind Tom Selleck's words? What changed at this moment? And what truth has remained unspoken for so long? And who stands to gain from it all? Keep watching. The quality Tom never forgot. Long before either man became a familiar face to millions, Tom Selleck noticed something about Sam Elliott that stayed with him for decades. It happened during the late 1960s, when both were still fighting for opportunities in an industry that offered very few guarantees. They were not stars then. They were simply two young actors trying to survive in Hollywood, hoping that one role might lead to another. Yet even in those uncertain years, there was a difference between them that Tom would remember long after the auditions, rejections, and career struggles had passed. Their paths crossed during the early stages of their careers, when success seemed distant for both men. Hollywood was crowded with ambitious performers, each trying to convince casting directors they deserved a chance. The competition was relentless, and many talented people disappeared before ever finding their breakthrough. Tom was still searching for his place in that world. He had the determination to keep going, but he was also navigating a future that remained unclear. Every opportunity felt important, because no one knew where the next one would come from. Sam Elliott appeared different. According to Tom's later reflections, Sam seemed to possess a level of certainty that was rare among young actors. It was not arrogance or self-promotion. Instead, it was a quiet confidence that suggested he already understood who he was and what kind of performer he wanted to become. While others chased trends or tried to fit whatever Hollywood demanded, Sam appeared comfortable with his own identity. He had a clear presence, a distinct style, and an understanding of himself that made an impression on those around him. For Tom, that confidence stood out because it contrasted with his own experience. He was talented and hardworking, but he was still figuring things out. Like many young actors, he faced doubts about his future and questions about where his career was heading. Looking back years later, he openly acknowledged that Sam often seemed further along in that journey. That observation was not made with bitterness or regret. If anything, it reflected genuine respect. Tom recognized qualities in Sam that many performers spend entire careers trying to develop. As both men continued building their careers, those early impressions never disappeared. Fame eventually arrived, but it arrived differently for each of them. Tom became one of television's biggest stars, while Sam followed a steadier path built on patience and consistency. Yet despite their different levels of public recognition, Tom's view of Sam remained remarkably unchanged. The qualities he had noticed at the beginning still appeared visible decades later. That realization gives new meaning to Tom Selleck's recent comments. His admiration was not formed by success or reputation alone. It was rooted in something he believed he had witnessed from the very start. And that insight may prove far more important than it first appeared. Could Tom have missed the one trait that set Sam apart from the beginning? Did Sam's early confidence signal something Tom only understood much later? And what does Tom realize in the next moment? Stay with us. Two paths through Hollywood's storm. Tom Selleck's reflection on Sam Elliott reveals two careers shaped by the same industry, but defined by very different paths. Both men entered Hollywood with a shared love for Western storytelling and often pursued similar opportunities, yet their outcomes diverged in striking ways. Tom's rise was rapid and highly visible. After years of struggling for major roles, his breakthrough came with Magnum P.I., transforming him into a global television icon. His charm, screen presence, and growing popularity turned him into one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment. Fame arrived quickly, and with it came awards, public recognition, and the kind of visibility many actors spend their entire lives chasing. Sam Elliott, however, built his career in a quieter, steadier way. Rather than one defining breakout moment, he earned respect through consistency and patience. His deep voice, grounded performances, and commanding presence became his signature. While he never relied on mass celebrity status, he earned something equally powerful: trust from directors, admiration from fellow actors, and lasting respect from audiences. Over time, the contrast between them became more complex than simple fame versus obscurity. Tom's experience highlighted how quickly recognition can rise and how unstable it can be. Sam's path showed how reputation can grow slowly, yet endure across decades. One was built on visibility, the other on credibility. This difference appears to have shaped how Tom later viewed success itself. His repeated admiration for Sam's clarity, discipline, and strong sense of identity suggests more than casual praise. It hints at a deeper recognition of qualities that kept Sam steady through decades of industry change without losing who he was. For observers, this raises a compelling question. Is Tom simply acknowledging a respected colleague, or reflecting on his own journey through the lens of Sam's choices? After experiencing both extraordinary fame and career challenges, His perspective on achievement may have evolved. What emerges is a subtle but powerful reconsideration of Hollywood success. Not just who becomes famous, but who remains grounded, respected, and enduring long after the spotlight shifts. As their paths began to diverge, something unexpected started to surface between them. Was fame truly the measure of success, or had something deeper been unfolding behind the scenes, unnoticed by everyone watching? Stay glued. The choice that changed everything. Few moments in Hollywood history have sparked as much speculation as the role Tom Selleck never played. Before he became forever tied to Magnum, PY, he stood at a turning point that could have completely reshaped his career. The opportunity was genuine, the role within reach, and the momentum finally building after years of struggle. Yet a single clash of timing would turn promise into one of cinema's most enduring what-if stories, lingering for decades not because of what happened, but because of what never had the chance to unfold. By the early 1980s, Selleck was finally breaking through after years of persistence marked by failed auditions and uncertain work. Then came the opportunity that could define a career: Indiana Jones. A role that promised global recognition and instant transformation. For a moment, everything seemed aligned for a leap forward into film stardom. But Hollywood rarely moves cleanly. At the same time, Selleck was contractually bound to CBS and committed to Magnum PY. When the schedules collided, the conflict became unavoidable. CBS held firm, the commitment stood, and the role slipped away. It eventually went to Harrison Ford, and the film became a cultural phenomenon that reshaped modern cinema. What followed was years of debate. Did Selleck miss the defining role of his life? Or did Magnum, Pierce, give him a different kind of legacy entirely? Both interpretations survive because both contain truth. One path led to cinematic immortality, the other to television superstardom. Few careers present such a stark balance between loss and success. Over time, Selleck appeared to accept the outcome. As Magnum PI secured his place in entertainment history. Yet even acceptance could not fully close the gap left behind by unanswered possibilities. The questions linger quietly beneath the surface of his legacy, refusing to disappear entirely. What if the timing had shifted at just the right moment? What if both paths had somehow been possible without conflict? And if that door had opened differently, how much of his story would we remember in another way today? That same reflection becomes even more revealing when viewed alongside Sam Elliott's career. While Selleck navigated sudden peaks of global visibility, Elliott built his reputation through steady, unhurried consistency. Different paths, different rhythms, and perhaps a different understanding of success itself. Over time, that contrast may have reshaped how Selleck viewed achievement, legacy, and the cost of opportunity in Hollywood. But as the dust settled, something deeper surfaced. What if the role had gone differently? Was success really what it seemed? And what did Sam see that Tom didn't before everything changed completely? Let's find out, when Hollywood left them behind. By the time Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott reached the later stages of their careers, Hollywood was no longer the industry they had entered decades earlier. The business had changed in ways that were impossible to ignore. New trends appeared, audience tastes shifted, and the definition of stardom began to evolve. For actors who had built their reputations on patience, professionalism, and consistency, the transformation raised an uncomfortable question. Did the qualities that once created lasting careers still matter in modern Hollywood? When Tom and Sam first started acting, success was often tied to endurance. Careers were built gradually through years of work, not overnight through sudden exposure. Actors earned trust by showing up, improving their craft, and proving they could carry a story. Reputation mattered. Reliability mattered. Relationships mattered. While fame was certainly important, it was not always the only measure of achievement. As the decades passed, however, the industry became increasingly focused on speed. New stars emerged quickly. Public attention shifted rapidly from one trend to another. The entertainment landscape expanded beyond traditional film and television, creating new paths to visibility. In many ways, the changes opened opportunities for a new generation. Yet they also created an environment where longevity became more difficult to maintain. Against that backdrop, Sam Elliott remained remarkably unchanged. While many performers adapted their public image to fit changing trends, Sam continued following the same principles that had guided him from the beginning. He chose roles carefully. He protected his identity as an actor. He rarely appeared interested in chasing attention for its own sake. Instead, he focused on the work itself. That consistency became one of the defining features of his career. Tom Selleck witnessed that approach for decades. He also experienced a different side of Hollywood. As a major television star, he understood how quickly public attention could shift and how unpredictable success could become. He saw careers rise suddenly and disappear just as fast. He watched the industry reward visibility while sometimes overlooking craftsmanship. Those experiences may have strengthened his appreciation for people who stayed grounded despite constant change. Some observers view this contrast as a reflection of two different career strategies. Others see something deeper. They argue that Tom's admiration for Sam grew because Sam represented values that were becoming increasingly rare: loyalty to one's craft, patience during difficult periods, a willingness to prioritize substance over publicity. These qualities may not always generate headlines, but they often earn lasting respect. Of course, not everyone would agree on what defines success. Some measure it through fame, awards, or financial achievement. Others measure it through consistency, integrity, and the ability to remain true to oneself. That debate sits quietly beneath Tom's reflections on Sam Elliott. As Hollywood continued shifting in unpredictable new directions, both men endured the changes in their own ways, adapting without losing who they were. Yet as the industry evolved further, Sam Elliott's steady, unhurried path began to stand out even more clearly against the chaos of fame and reinvention. That contrast grew harder to ignore over time, and that quiet realization may be guiding Tom Selleck toward a deeper reflection, one that hints at a larger truth he is only now beginning to reveal about success, legacy, and what truly endures. How does an industry change when loyalty and craftsmanship are no longer rewarded? What happens to actors who refuse to adapt, and who quietly disappears when the rules of stardom are rewritten? Stay tuned. After the cameras finally stopped. For most of his adult life, Tom Selleck always had somewhere to be. There was a set waiting, a script to study, a scene to film, or a production schedule shaping his days. Decades passed in that rhythm. From Magnum, PY to Blue Bloods, work remained a constant presence. Then, almost suddenly, that routine came to an end. The conclusion of Blue Bloods marked more than the cancellation of a television series. It pushed Tom into one of the most uncertain periods he had faced in years. The situation was especially difficult because Blue Bloods had become far more than just another acting job. For 14 seasons, Tom played Frank Reagan, the respected New York City police commissioner at the center of the show's family-driven story. The series built a loyal audience and remained one of television's strongest performers. To many viewers, it seemed stable, successful, and secure. That decided to end it particularly surprising. Tom did not hide his disappointment. Unlike many actors who quietly accept network decisions, he spoke openly about his frustration. He pointed to the show's ratings and continued popularity. From his perspective, there was still life left in the series, yet the outcome did not change. CBS moved forward with its decision, and by December 2024, Blue Bloods had officially reached its conclusion. What happened next was far less visible than the show's final episodes. Publicly, Tom remained composed. Privately, however, the adjustment appeared more complicated. For 14 years, his life had revolved around a demanding production schedule that required constant movement between California and New York. Suddenly, that structure disappeared. The routine that had organized his days was gone. Friends and family reportedly noticed the change. Tom returned to his California ranch and immersed himself in physical work. Repairs, maintenance projects, and daily responsibilities filled much of his time. On the surface, it looked productive. Yet some people close to him became concerned. The workload seemed unusually intense for someone who was supposedly enjoying retirement. According to reports, he appeared discouraged and struggled with the transition more than many expected. That period raised uncomfortable questions. Was this simply the natural challenge of ending a long-running job, or was something deeper taking place? For someone whose identity had been connected to acting for decades, stepping away from a successful series carried emotional consequences that could not be measured through ratings or contracts. The uncertainty surrounding what came next may have been just as difficult as the cancellation itself. Different observers interpreted the situation differently. Some saw an actor adjusting to change. Others saw a man confronting the possibility that an important chapter of his life had ended. Whatever the truth, the experience exposed a rare vulnerability. And as Tom faced that difficult transition, the value of certain relationships began to stand out more clearly than ever before, setting the stage for an unexpected turning point. With blue bloods gone, what does Tom face behind closed doors? How does he redefine his identity? And is this truly the end of the road or the beginning of something unexpected for him? Let's unravel the truth. The friend who quietly stayed. The most important moments in a friendship are not always the ones the public sees. Sometimes they happen far from cameras, headlines, and interviews. For Tom Selleck, one of those moments appears to have arrived during the difficult period that followed the end of Blue Bloods. After decades of constant work, he suddenly found himself facing uncertainty. The future looked less predictable than it had in years. It was during that vulnerable chapter that the value of an old friendship became impossible to overlook. By this point, Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott had known each other for nearly 6 decades. Their connection stretched back to the late 1960s, long before fame transformed either man's life. They had entered Hollywood as unknown actors, searching for opportunities in a business famous for rejection. Over the years, they experienced different levels of success, but they also shared many of the same struggles. They understood what it felt like to wait for opportunities, lose roles, and face long periods of uncertainty. That shared history gave their relationship a depth that could not be created through professional networking or occasional public appearances. They had watched each other evolve through changing decades, changing careers, and changing versions of Hollywood itself. Few people understood the pressures of the industry better than they did, and even fewer understood what those pressures felt like over an entire lifetime. When Blue Bloods ended, Tom faced a challenge that many longtime performers quietly feared. For 14 years, the series had provided structure, purpose, and routine. Its cancellation created a sudden void. Reports suggested that the transition affected him more deeply than many outsiders realized. While he remained active on his California ranch, people close to him reportedly noticed signs of disappointment and frustration beneath the surface. It was during this period that Sam Elliott reportedly reached out. There was no public announcement, no dramatic display, and no attempt to turn the moment into a headline. Instead, it reflected something much simpler. One friend recognized that another friend was struggling and decided to make contact. The gesture may have seemed small from the outside, but its significance became clearer when viewed through the lens of their shared experiences. Sam understood the uncertainty Tom was facing because he had lived through similar moments himself. Throughout his own career, he had spoken openly about the frustration of waiting for opportunities and dealing with rejection. He knew how quickly confidence could be tested when the phone stopped ringing. That understanding likely gave his support a different kind of weight. Some observers might dismiss the story as an ordinary act of friendship. Others could see something more meaningful. After all, genuine loyalty becomes easier to recognize when circumstances become difficult. The fact that Sam was there during one of Tom's most uncertain periods may help explain why Tom's recent comments carried such emotion. What emerged was no longer simply admiration between colleagues. It was evidence of a bond strengthened by decades of shared challenges. and its true significance may only now be coming into focus. What happens when an old friendship becomes the only thing standing between collapse and survival? What was said in those private calls, and what truth resurfaced after decades of silence? The last Western bond. As talk surrounding Tom Selleck's reflections on Sam Elliott continued to circulate, attention slowly shifted towards something even more intriguing: the possibility that their story might not be finished yet. For decades, both men had been closely associated with Western storytelling, a genre that shaped their identities on screen and helped define their careers. From dusty landscapes to quiet, morally complex characters, they became part of a tradition that once dominated American entertainment. Now, in later life, that shared legacy had taken on new meaning. Their connection to Westerns was not accidental. It was built over years of choosing roles that reflected a certain type of character, one defined by restraint, integrity, and quiet strength. Tom Selleck carried that presence through television and film, while Sam Elliott became one of the most recognizable modern symbols of the genre's voice and tone. Even as Hollywood moved toward new styles and formats, both men remained linked to the older cinematic language of open spaces, hard choices, and understated emotion. As time passed, audiences began to notice something else. The idea of seeing Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott together again carried a kind of emotional weight that went beyond casting curiosity. It represented a connection to a fading era of storytelling, one where character often mattered more than spectacle. This perception gradually turned the idea of a collaboration into something symbolic rather than simply professional. Reports and discussions in entertainment circles suggested that interest in future projects had not completely disappeared. While nothing concrete was confirmed, the idea of one final collaboration occasionally resurfaced in conversation. For many viewers, it was not about box office potential or industry strategy. It was about closure, memory, and the chance to see two long-standing figures share the screen one more time. Yet beneath that anticipation was a more complex reality. Both men had already built complete, respected careers independently. Tom Selleck's television legacy stood firmly on its own, while Sam Elliott's filmography reflected decades of consistent, recognizable work. That strength made the idea of reuniting less about necessity and more about meaning. It raised the question of whether such a moment would enhance their legacy or simply echo what had already been accomplished separately. Some observers viewed the speculation as natural nostalgia, a reflection of audiences who long for familiar faces in a changing industry. Others saw it as something deeper, suggesting that the desire for a collaboration came from the recognition that both actors represent a style of filmmaking that is becoming increasingly rare. Their presence on screen together would not just be entertainment, it would be a reminder of what once defined an entire genre. As the conversation continues, the possibility remains open, suspended between memory and expectation, leaving their shared legacy still unfolding rather than fully concluded. Could this unfinished Western finally bring them back together? What story remains untold between them? And if the cameras roll again, will it change everything audiences thought they knew? Or is this the final act? The truth behind a quiet legacy. As Tom Selleck's words about Sam Elliott finally came into focus, the meaning behind them appeared far larger than a simple tribute between two old friends. It was not just admiration, but a reflection shaped by decades of watching Hollywood change around both men. For Tom Selleck, Sam Elliott represented something that had become increasingly rare in the industry they both entered in their youth. That was not fame or visibility, but consistency, patience, and a refusal to lose identity in the pursuit of success. While Tom experienced both massive recognition and difficult transitions across his career, he observed Sam moving through Hollywood with a steadier rhythm. That difference slowly reshaped how Tom understood achievement, especially as the entertainment industry became more focused on speed and short-lived attention. From that perspective, Sam Elliott's career was not seen as smaller or quieter, but as something more grounded and deliberate. Some interpreted Tom's recent silence-breaking comments as a personal reflection shaped by age, experience, and the changing meaning of success. Others believed it revealed a deeper realization that Hollywood often rewards visibility more than substance, something Sam Elliott quietly resisted throughout his career. Tom's words therefore stood at the intersection of admiration reflection, and a broader question about what lasting legacy in Hollywood truly means. They suggested that success can not only be measured by fame, but also by the quiet respect earned over a lifetime of work. In that sense, Tom Selleck's silence finally broke, not to settle a story, but to reveal how deeply Sam Elliott influenced his understanding of it. It also highlighted how both men, despite different levels of fame, continued to represent a fading era of character-driven storytelling that once defined Hollywood's identity. In Tom's reflection, Sam's steadiness was not accidental, but a result of choices made consistently over decades of work in an unpredictable industry. That idea created a quiet contrast between two successful careers that many outside observers once viewed as simply similar in tone and genre. Now, however, those same careers appeared to reflect different philosophies about what it meant to endure and succeed in Hollywood. Tom Selleck's silence-breaking comments therefore became less about Sam Elliott alone and more about his own evolving perspective on legacy. It suggested that understanding Sam might also mean understanding the version of success Tom had spent his entire life navigating. In that realization, the boundary between admiration and reflection blurred, leaving behind a deeper question about what truly endures after fame fades. Ultimately, Tom Selleck's decision to speak about Sam Elliott was not framed as a final statement, but as an ongoing reflection shaped by memory, experience, and a long career inside Hollywood, where recognition often shifts quickly, yet respect for character and consistency tends to remain far longer than any moment of fame or public attention. So, what do you think? Was Tom Selleck revealing admiration for Sam Elliott, or is there more behind his silence-breaking moment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.